this is Dave, and got something new here. I've got a bunch of pens, but one of these is not like the others. And it's not like the others in quite a few ways. First of all, it's not an Italian pen. And second of all, it's not inspired by the same original pen. It's inspired by something completely different. And it comes in at under $60, whereas the other ones come in starting at $200 all the way up to $1,500. And that pen is this one here, the Majohn P139. And it is the topic of our review today. I bring this one up because it has some interesting features, and those two things are under the cap here, a number 8 size nib, and an ebonite feed. All right, let's take a look at some of the pen's features. At the top of the video, I said that this was not inspired by the same original pen as the other ones. No, this one is inspired by a Montblanc Hemingway, and that is the tie-in to Hemingway here. Okay, at the top of the pen, we have a finial with a conical section, and then a band with an integrated clip. And the clip is very reminiscent of the one that is on the Montblanc. At the bottom of the cap, we have two bands. The lower band is a bit wider with engraving all the way through, and no marks at all as far as the name. On the back of the cap, as you just saw, it says Moon Man. And I did mention that this is a Majohn. You'll see Majohn on the pen elsewhere. Moon Man is sort of an umbrella company that runs several brands, and Majohn is one of those. We have a orange body here, but this comes in two other resins. One is kind of a crystalline white color with some pearlescence in it. And the other one is what they call gray stone. Towards the end here, we have a blind cap. That's right. This is a piston filler, so this is a blind cap with function in it. And there's a knurling here, as you can tell. And that knurling is kind of important because this does grip against the body quite a bit. In the middle, we have a band, which is just purely decorative and kind of reminiscent of the Montblanc version. And then again, a conical ending on this side. The cap comes undone in 1, 2, and about a quarter turns. And then that exposes the number 8 nib, which is made in-house by Moon Man. And it has the Moon Man Sun Moon logo. Underneath that, it says Majohn. And then under Majohn in smaller letters, it says Expedition for some reason. Below Expedition is the size and the sort of off center. And I chalk that up to whomever did the design not understanding where the midline of the M is in the English alphabet. The section has a lip here at the end, which is great. And then it is slightly tapered up to the threads. There's quite a few threads here. They're not very sharp though. But the number of threads definitely accounts for the 2 1/4 turns that it needs to uncap it. Then there is a ink level window here, which is very handy. On the underside of the nib is that ebonite feed that we were talking about. Now, the pen posts, however, I don't recommend it because if you twist the cap, it will activate the piston and start pushing ink out of the feed. So I don't recommend using this pen posted. One other thing I'll mention is that if you like the idea of getting a number 8 nib and an ebonite feed, but don't like this body styling, you can get a cigar-shaped one, the P140. It's an identical pen, but it has more of the Montblanc Meisterstück 149 shape. All right, let's do some measurements, size comparison, and a writing sample. I'm going to be using Edelstein Onyx Black and Rhodia 80 GSM dot paper. Okay, so the results. The Majohn P139 has a very smooth feel to it with a pleasant feedback. I will say that the differences in the feedback and the smoothness are quite different depending on the angle that you're writing. I don't know if you were able to make it out through the sound that I was recording with these lines here, but every direction sounded different and felt different too. The ink flow variation is quite nice. Here's a very fine line, and then one with some medium pressure, and then one with some heavy pressure, which also bears out in the S curves here. You can see that I can get a fairly thin line for a medium nib, which is pretty nice. And while I'm talking about the medium nib, these nibs are available in medium, fine, and extra fine. It's also available as a number 6 instead of a number 8, also in medium, fine, and extra fine if that's what you prefer. The ink flow was really quite nice, but there's a story there. I have already tuned this nib, but I will add that as a second part of this video towards the end. For the quick writing and the continuous writing, things went pretty well in the verticals. There was some drying out in the sections here in the horizontals that you can see. Here's another example. And that is also something that I could tune out with a little more opening and up of the ink flow. There were no issues in the quick writing down here. Continuous writing all the way through, no breaks or skips. The long lines, you can see that we have a consistent ink flow all the way through. And for the reverse writing, well, there was a little bit of lightening up here, and in fact, a break right here. That also would go away with some additional opening up of the tines, but reverse writing in the right to left direction, completely fine all the way across. I really appreciate the wider grip on this, which is about 11.5. It was very comfortable, and the threads didn't seem to bother me at all. I'm not sure how that would work in a long writing session, but they are quite high, and it's not like I can't feel them at all, but it's not a place where I'm putting much pressure. Well, that's it for me and the Majohn P139. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel. And also think about joining our Patreon. It's completely free, doesn't cost you a dime, and you get all the content that you get here on YouTube, only you get it a week earlier and without any ads in it. So there's a reason to sign up right there. Also, that's where we're doing all the giveaways now. And stay tuned for a brief session on how I tune this for more ink flow. Thanks for watching, and be well. So I'm going to use a jeweler's loop. These are very inexpensive and usually come in a kit of like 5 or 6 different strengths for, $10, whatever. Not very expensive at all. And I'm going to first of all examine the nib and see if there's any problems with it to begin with. I want to start with a good baseline. And then we'll start making some adjustments, and I'll explain those here in a second. But before we get there, I want to point out one thing I've already noticed. And if you can see here, the feed is slightly off center of the nib. So I'm going to do that first and then test it. And all you need to do when you're adjusting that is just to move the feed without trying to move I'm going to use a rag here, as if you're trying to unthread it. Grab a hold of the nib and not the feed so much. It's a little bit of brute forcing, but you don't want to apply too much pressure because we're not trying to bend the nib at all. And now you can see that it's properly aligned, but we still have some issues with the ink flow. And just to prove that, I'm going to So it's about the same. Can account for the slight difference in the amount of ink that was deposited in a smaller spot here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the tines and make sure that they're properly aligned with each other. And they are. Now, if what I'm looking for is I will check the profile of the nib, and this is the tipping material here. And I'm looking to see if there is a little bit of a profile of the other tine behind it. And then I'll reverse it. And look at it from the other angle and see if there is any bit of profile of the tine from the other side there. It shouldn't be. It should just be perfectly like that on both sides. And it is with this one. Okay, so the next part, I'm going to have to do a little bit of explanation on how this works. The top of the nib is curved like this. And if you consider this to be the slit in the nib, then when we push down on it, we're causing the tines to spread apart, and that's what deposits more ink. So what we're going to try to do here is to lift the tines a little bit on one side and then lift it a little bit on the other side and cause those to stay permanently open without any pressure being applied to it. Now, when we do apply pressure later on, it will just pull them further apart. And that's the way we want it. Right now, they're too close together. If you looked at it under a microscope, you would see that the top two tines are actually touching. Now, in an ideal situation, you should see just a little bit of air or light coming through the two tines at the top, including where the tipping material is. I don't know if you're able to see that here, but really what we've got is a situation where the tines are completely closed at the top, and that is suboptimal. So the way we do this is just use our fingernail, and we gently apply pressure on one of the two tines straight up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I usually do like 6. And then 6 on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm not pushing really hard. I'm doing kind of a down motion like that and stopping at the same spot each time. Then we want to look at the nib, the very tip of the nib again, and see if there's any misalignment of the two, which there almost always will be. And in this case, this side is down a little bit. It looks like this, not like this, but like this on this side. So the tine on this side is too far down. So I want to give it about 3. 1, 2, 3. And then look at it again. And that looks about right. And then we want to test the ink flow again. Much better. Now we're seeing it all the way out to here. Just do one more. That looks really good. That's about what I want for this pen right now. Later on, I might come back and do some more, just to add a little more. Now, what happens if you went too far and you've got too much ink coming out? Well, you just reverse the process. It's a little more difficult because the feed will get in the way. If the feed is getting in the way and you're not able to bend the tines down, don't try to bend just the tip of the tines over the tip of the feed. That's going to be bad. What you want to do in that case is to pull out the nib and feed, separate the nib itself, and then bend the tines as we did before, but just in the reverse direction. And this will cause the tines to move down and be permanently in a further down position. Now, obviously, you don't want to go and do this with your 21 karat gold Pelican, nib or a Sailor. That's probably not where you want to start, but a pen like this that's running around, $55, $60, and you really want to get more out of, go ahead and try that. In fact, you can go buy some really cheap nibs in batches of like 12 that you can practice on, and they'll come with the feed and a sleeve that will hold it all together, so you can really get some good practice in that way. And you'll notice that you can get a lot more out of a lot of your nibs than you originally thought, and it can change your whole opinion about a pen. So we just did basically one iteration of this. If I felt like I wanted more flow than I got out of it, I think I did pretty good here on the first try, and it's right about where I want. That typically doesn't happen. It takes 3 or 4 times before you get the exact amount that you want. And just be gentle. Take it in small increments. 6 is a lot, but that's what I use because I'm more familiar with it. But if you're not as comfortable with bending up your nibs, then maybe only do 3 little presses at a time with your thumbnails. And take it slow and make sure that you check along the way. Also, don't try to do it without a loop. You're just going to find that you're basically operating blind there. Make sure you're using a loop.